Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and this is a special edition of Conversations with a Corgi. And I'm not sure how to approach this because I love this book that we're going to talk about so much, but it's pretty long. And if I had the way to read it in 8 segments, we'd be all set. So I think today I'll talk about it, read a little bit of the beginning of it, and see how long that takes without boring you. So the book is one of my favorite ever all-time Christmas stories, and I learned about it late into my Corgi ownership. It's called The Watching, A Corgi Christmas Tale, and you can get it from Corgi Aid, and it's by Millie J. Williams, and then it's got wonderful illustrations from a whole list of Corgi artists, many of whom's work I have in my house. I mean, look at these pictures. Some of them are just so adorable. A little Corgi riding his pony. So, and I'll tell you what it says on the back. Christmas was coming, and Princess Chavot and all the other Corgis and animals at the castle were preparing for a mysterious and magical event called The Watching. The little red and white Corgi Lola had been abandoned at the castle doorway because she couldn't do her job herding farm animals. Like other lucky rescued dogs, she had found safety at last. But would she be able to overcome her fears and journey to the field for the watching? And what big surprise would await all of the watchers? This book was created to benefit Corgi Aid, a nonprofit organization that provides support and medical expenses for Cardigan Welsh Corgis, Pembroke Welsh Corgis, and all Corgi mixes. So let's start. And this book is dedicated to the real Lola, a rescue Corgi who inspired the story. May all Corgis in rescue find their way to health, happiness, and love in a forever home. And may Corgi Aid always be able to help these Corgis in rescue who need us. There's a picture of Lola that somebody did in a needlework. And I can't read this book without crying, which is a problem because it's so beautiful. The quiet tapping at the door sounded urgent. After a short while, a royal maid crept into the royal bedchamber. Quickly approaching the bed, she touched the lady-in-waiting on the shoulder. Lady, are you awake?" she whispered. "There is an emergency and we don't know what to do." The lady-in-waiting sat up and rubbed her eyes. When she saw how distressed the maid was, she put on her bathrobe and slippers, the pink bunny ones that a Corgi puppy had given her for her birthday. The 2 humans crept out of the bedroom quietly so as not to disturb the emperor. As they hurried down the hall, the royal maid explained. A foundling had been left on the door to the castle with a note tied to its collar. One of the royal footmen had discovered it just minutes ago. Not knowing what else to do, the footman had brought it to the kitchen, and the royal chef had given it a bowl of food. "Is it a boy or a girl?" the lady-in-waiting wondered. "I'm not sure, but it's red and white," said the royal maid. In just a couple of minutes, they were at the kitchen, the center of much of the castle's activities. Sitting at the table was the royal chef with a big bowl of what looked like macaroni and cheese in front of him. He also had on a bathrobe and blue bunny slippers. The lady-in-waiting smiled, for most of the staff at the castle had bunny slippers of some color or another, given as gifts from their favorite Corgi pups. Her glance drifted, and she saw a small red and white Corgi on the floor, gulping down the warm macaroni and cheese. What Corgi wouldn't love that? She took a chair and waited for the pup to finish eating. The little Corgi had a rather large rip out of its right ear. She wondered how that had happened. When the Corgi was through eating, she called it gently to her and picked it up. It was filthy, but she didn't hesitate to put it in her lap, where a quick glance confirmed that it was a girl. The lady-in-waiting ruffled the Corgi's ears. "What's your name?" she asked, as the royal chef handed over the note, which quickly had been read. "Lola," burped the puppy, full of her macaroni and cheese. The note said that Lola had been bought as a farm dog to herd sheep and cattle and sometimes ducks. However, there had been a problem because Lola was afraid of farm animals. The note stated that she was being given up to rescue as the owners did not want a useless dog around the farm anymore. Since it was early daylight and Mr. Andre, the castle's hairdresser, was still in bed, the lady-in-waiting wasted no time and went right to the kitchen sink, where she promptly gave Lola a good scrub. The footmen and the maids scurried around in their bunny slippers, gathering towels, soap, and other things required for the bath. Soon Lola was squeaky clean, and the footman was instructed to take her for a walk and warned, "Don't let her roll." I want her dry when the emperor comes down for his breakfast, the lady-in-waiting cautioned. It was always good to present a clean foundling to him when one came to the castle for fostering. She watched the royal footman attach a leash and take Lola out. There was much work to do. Yes, much work on this day. Lola would need a new collar. She would need introductions to everyone, and she would certainly need to learn some manners. So the lady-in-waiting went back upstairs to begin the preparations. And here's sad little Lola with her chomped ear and her note outside the castle gate. Over the next few days, Lola was introduced to all of the humans and animals at the castle, and her lessons began in earnest. She was taught how to be a polite Corgi, to say, please, thank you, and I'm sorry. She was given a tour so that she knew where everything was and was shown where she would sleep. The only problem was the farmyard. As the note had noted or specified, Lola was afraid of farm animals. Not merely afraid, but terrified. The lady-in-waiting had to take her away from the barnyard when Lola began to tear around in a circle, desperate to get away from the animals that she did not understand. So the lady-in-waiting decided that lessons in farm animals might help Lola. First, she was shown pictures of the animals. She seemed happy enough with those and even licked a few of them. Then she was shown animal videos and shows on TV. These made Lola very restless. But so long as a human was there with her and the human's arms were tightly wrapped around her for safety, Lola coped rather well. Next, large stuffed toys, sheep, ducks, and cows were brought in. Now Lola didn't mind these at all and played rather nicely with them. But when the toys were rubbed in a similar live animal smell in the barnyard to help her get used to the scent, she sat in the farthest part of the room, turned her head away, and closed her eyes. She did not like the scent and refused to play with her toys anymore. Oh, Tristan has his festive necklace. She would not even look at them. She believed that if she could not see them, they couldn't see her. After all the ideas that the lady-in-waiting and others had come up with were tried, the emperor decided on something new, announcing that he had a special plan for Lola. He clipped her new purple leash onto her purple collar and led her out to the barn. This is not what Lola wanted at all. She struggled and tried to get away. But the emperor firmly put her in a box stall in the barn that contained her food bowl, her water bowl, a soft and comfortable bed, and quite a large number of toys and bones. Lola was anxious. She kept looking around for farm animals, but didn't see any. She sniffed the air suspiciously. Yes, there was some kind of animal near, but to Lola, all farm animals smelled similar. She curled up and lay down on her bed, putting her head under the blanket. Maybe if she could not see the animal, it could not see her. She heard the emperor leave, and it was quiet for a very long time. And then Lola heard strange noises. There were rustlings and stompings in the straw in the next stall. Lola peeked from under her blanket just in time to see a large gray monster stick its head over the side of the wall of the box stall. And boy, that's how Tristan was when he met a horse once. Of course, it was not a monster at all, but a very small pony. He was dappled gray and quite handsome, with a long flowing mane and tail. Hence the picture on the cover. Lola and the pony looked at each other and shrieked, one in Corgi language and one in pony language, for the pony was as afraid of Lola as she was of him. One barked furiously and the other whinnied and kicked his stall. Soon they were both exhausted and just stood there panting and looking out of the corners of their eyes at each other. Finally Lola spoke. "You are a horse. I am afraid of horses." Lola thought that if she said that, the pony would leave her alone. The pony shook his mane. "I am not a horse. I am a pony." He stamped his little hooves to show that he could trample a Corgi if he needed to. Lola remembered the lesson she had learned from the lady-in-waiting. Maybe she thought it would be better to be nice to the pony until she could figure out a way to escape. "My name is Lola," she began, but the pony stamped her little feet some more to keep Lola away from the stall that separated the two of them. "What a silly name," the pony whinnied. "I have never heard such a silly name." Lola put her ruff up. "And so what is your name?" she asked rather belligerently. "Sebastian," he snorted and stomped his feet again. At this point, Lola had had enough and decided to go back under her blanket. And that was all the conversation that they had that day, as both were afraid of each other. And the next day, the royal chef gave each animal extra treats for breakfast, and after such a big meal, they could not help but sleep. Later in the day, though, Sebastian attempted some conversation. He was bored, and the only one he had to talk to was that silly Corgi in the next box stall. "I do not like dogs," he stated as he stomped his little hooves again for emphasis. "I think horses are dumb," said Lola. That was the end of their conversation that day. And all that night, Sebastian kicked the side of his stall to wake up Lola just to be mean. Lola would wait a while, and then she would begin to bark to keep Sebastian awake. By the next morning, they were both very tired, so they ate their breakfast without a word and slept most of the morning. The standoff between Lola and Sebastian continued, so one day the lady-in-waiting brought out some treats and smiled at both animals. "I think all is going well," the gentle lady asked. Both animals looked sulky and didn't answer. Lola and Sebastian wanted to go outside very badly, but they did not want to be near each other. However, the appeal of going out was stronger than the niggling taunting that they had been inflicting on each other, so that night, for the first time, both slept rather peacefully and woke refreshed after a trip outside. When the lady-in-waiting arrived the next day, she took them to a small corral just big enough to race around and stretch. But the two animals went to opposite sides of the corral and stayed there. Shrugging, the lady-in-waiting left, but posted a crow to watch and to come to get her if there was any trouble between them. After a while, Lola casually wandered over and peeked under the open door into the stall of Sebastian. When he was looking out over the field, she dashed in and then out again as quick as could be. But she didn't realize that ponies have eyes on the sides of their heads and can see behind them. Lola eventually was tired and curled up to take a nap. Sebastian tiptoed over to her stall, looked inside, checked again to make sure she was asleep, and then went out and in again, resuming his place, looking over the fields and swishing his beautiful tail. When the animals returned to their stalls for the night, both were shocked. Lola had scattered hay all over the floor of Sebastian's stall, dumped his water, dug a hole, and buried his evening carrots. And Lola was stunned to see Sebastian had done much the same thing to her stall. He had dumped her water on her bed, too, trampled her food container. All the treats were ruined. Sebastian kicked the stall again that night, and Lola barked when she heard him breathing softly, knowing he was asleep. The next day, when the lady-in-waiting checked on them, she was upset over their mess and their poor manners. She told them they had to be punished. They had to stay outside together in the corral unless it rained. The doors to the stalls would be closed. They would have to share a water bucket. No soft beds, no treats. If food was ruined by bad behavior, too bad. That was all the food they'd get that day. She was very firm, but inside she was laughing. With all her experience with animals, she figured that any interaction between them was a good step forward. Over the next few weeks, the two little animals mostly ignored each other, but did occasionally speak. One day, Lola admitted that, for a farm animal, Sebastian had a lovely mane and tail. Another day, the sun bounced off Lola's copper petticoat and it sparkled. Sebastian cautiously offered a compliment, and Lola accepted it and thanked him. The bits of resentment and fear between the animals began to break down, and they were finally allowed to have their own separate sleeping areas again. And then, here's another picture of Sebastian and Lola. There's so many great pictures in this book. So, of course, they become fast friends. And then there is a big event called The Watching, and they are invited to go. And I don't even know what to say about it. There's so much wonderful stuff in this book. They decorate the trees in the area where the watching is going to take place. And all the other animals get dressed up and they're pretty, and they get in their carts and they start to head down to the field where the watching is going to take place, and they're singing. Let's see. We'll skip to chapter 7. And they all had questions about the watching. What is the watching? And here's a picture of them at the watching. So you can see that there's a nativity scene and all the animals are there. And then their questions were answered. A little glimmer appeared in the sky, streaking downward and then curving back upward. It crossed itself and zipped across the horizon. A few of the first watchers stood up and then remembered to sit down again. It was starting. As everyone watched the glimmer, suddenly the sky became bright, and the color that the animals could see was so bright they could see the whiskers on the animal next to them. It had never happened so fast, and it surprised many of them. Zigzags of light wove in and out, making the colors dance in the eyes of all who watched. One or two of the first watchers were a bit afraid, but settled down when they realized that they were not going to be hurt. After a while, the colors faded, and there was a silent strain as everyone adjusted their eyes to see. Everyone gazed at the valley just below the watching field. Then they saw them, the man and the lady and the baby. They were misty figures at first, but everyone knew who they were. In a few minutes, they became very clear and everyone could see them. The family was in front of a small barn, and this year the baby was sleeping quietly, which caused several of the older animals to issue quiet shh around to the new animals. The animals were happy that the baby had been born in a manger in a barn. That was a good place to be born, and many of them had entered this life in exactly the same way. Soon the baby gave a little kick and turned and stretched, and the lady picked him up. She gave him a smile and a little hug, and then tenderly held him close to her. Everyone could tell how much she loved him. The man beamed and held his hands out, and the lady placed the baby in his arms, where he too lovingly snuggled the child. A group of shepherds and a border collie approached with several sheep. They gave the lady a little lamb that was as white as a cloud. The animals noticed some strange creatures coming in from the other side of the field. They looked carefully. Yes, it was those odd-looking creatures that they were fascinated by every year. These were the camels, and St. Francis, smiled as he saw the puzzled looks when it was noticed that some camels had one hump and some had two. He wondered if the boss had been behind that bit of a surprise. That would puzzle the Corgis for many days to come. The men riding the camels got off, bowed, and gave the lady some presents. But suddenly there was a disruption. The elder Corgis looked about for St. Frank to explain this unplanned event. A gray pony with a red Corgi riding on its back trotted across the field. And that, of course, is Lola and Sebastian. The lady and the man looked at each other in surprise and then smiled, and the baby smiled too. It was Sebastian, being ridden by Lola. Sebastian and Lola greeted the family, and then Sebastian began to lope slowly around in a circle. As he did, Lola sat on her back paws on his back and then turned around several times. Then she made a mighty leap off Sebastian and then back on again, much to the delight of the special family. Lola and Sebastian performed several more tricks, then a short dance routine, turning in synchrony. Finally, they stopped in front of the family, and Sebastian bowed deeply. Lola leapt off and gave a little Corgi bow, too. The baby gurgled and laughed, which touched everyone. They knew he was very pleased with this gift. Panting a little bit from the exertion, Lola and Sebastian stood by quietly, and at last the long-awaited song began. It came from above, yet all around them. Every year it was a new song, every year different, but somehow the same as the year before. It was beautiful and soft. Everyone's eyes looked upward where they saw the choir in the air above the scene in the field. Oh, how many animals and humans were there! It was all the ones who had left this earth for a place in the sky. Everyone sought out and strained to see old friends, old family members, beloved elders, humans too. And they were there, every single one of them. The Corgis were relieved as they picked out each creature or human that they had loved. All were young again, all were bright, all were happy. There were dogs and cats and horses and squirrels and even some beavers. There was a camel and a zebra. Everywhere one looked, there was someone they knew. The choir waved and called out personal messages, which miraculously could be heard clearly by each watcher for whom the message was intended, yet not by the creature next to them. Casper and Nebi the cat looked anxiously through the huge crowd of animals and people who were singing above them. "Look," whispered Casper, "she's up there." And sure enough, there was Bronwyn, a brindle cardigan beauty. The two animals were very excited as they waved and blew kisses to Bronwyn, who waved back at them. And a lot of the names in this book are real Corgis that we've known. Tyler was being held by a pretty young woman who was called Jo. She also had Diva in her lap, a sweet little Havernese. Diva had been confused when she arrived, but had been taken over by Jo to comfort and love her until she was reunited with those who had loved her on earth. And here's a wonderful picture of all the animals at the watching, seeing the animals in heaven that they used to know. There was Einstein and Guido racing around and barking, causing the Corgis on wheels to wipe away a tear or two. They were so happy to see their friends running. Jerome, who had followed Guido to the bridge, was now restored to health and looked dignified. Vera sat with both of the boys, helping them through their first watching on the other side of life. Lurch, the kitty who had lived with Guido and Jerome, looked on in disgust. You couldn't take those boys anywhere without them causing a ruckus. With a fierce meow, he brought them in line, so the song continued. A young man named Joseph sat with several animals about him, a Corgi named Normie on his lap, and Felix and Beethoven and Rusty and Mozart sitting close to him. They all waved madly down to Shirley the Fluff and Bunsen. "Tell Mom her dad is here," and "Okay," they all called down to the earthly group. Another young man sat nearby. His name was Marty, and he was surrounded by pets who had gone ahead of him. There was Baron and Indy and Angel and German Shepherds, and of course Duncan the Corgi, who wiggled and squirmed and made Marty laugh. The divine Miss Emily sat with Tigger and smiled down at Skeezix. Nearby sat Aunt Jeff, Hurricane Hugo, Mr. Monty, and the Cat Clan. Brewster, Einstein, Loretta Lynn, Skeeter, Max, Grampy, and Spook. Emily disappeared for just a moment and was quickly back and continued to sing. Elsewhere on earth, a heartbroken Melissa thought for sure that she had felt a soft kiss on her nose, and Tim sat nearby and hugged a big German Shepherd called Boris, and they sang the beautiful song together. Brandy, who had been so ill before leaving, now had a glow on her face that was bright as the sun. And then it goes on and lists all these animals. Groom and Wallace looked up to see their human grandpa sitting there. He was young again and so happy. He held in his lap Beckett and Botch, two corgis who had left very close together, breaking two families' hearts. Slasher was there too, and all three dogs barked their greetings to those below. Bernie, who was Ruth's father, waved down to Woody and Thumper, who barely recognized him. It was only his scent, which drifted from the breeze, that alerted them to his presence. How he smiled down at them. They could hardly contain their tears. Eventually, the choir faded, and so did the song. One or two of the first-time watchers called out, "Don't go, please don't go," but the images disappeared. The animals would never forget the song this year, for it had touched so many hearts. The tears were shed at seeing those who had been lost, and it was good to know that they lived on in another place. As the sky began to grow lighter, St. Frank addressed all the animals, saying that Lola and Sebastian had worked very hard to overcome their fears, and that fears were what kept anyone from believing in themselves or what was to come. Lola and Sebastian walked slowly up from the field to stand quietly behind St. Frank, and then St. Frank blessed them all, wishing them a good watching, and dismissed them to return to their homes. Angels quietly came from the woods to assist in tucking in elders so that they would remain warm for the ride home. The saints did a head count to be sure that everyone was in line and would follow the wagons home back to the castle. Other animals got up and stretched and said that it was the best watching ever. The wild animals dispersed into the woods as silently as they had come. As the caravan left the field, someone behind them began to sing a song, and then others joined in. It was soft, as everyone was tired, but a good many of the animals managed to sing nearly all of the way home. Lola and Sebastian brought up the rear together, having overcome their trials and hard times to become good friends. And St. Frank, St. Nick, St. Val, and St. John smiled to themselves as they saw another watching miracle taking place in their little charges' lives. So that was part of the book called The Watching, which is available from Corgi Aid Incorporated. And its sales all go to benefit corgis. And I'm sure other breed organizations do similar things, but this is an extraordinary book with amazing pictures. And I highly recommend reading it. Many corgi people choose to read it on Christmas Eve to their corgis, which we will do the rest of tonight. So thanks for joining us today for this special Christmas Eve Conversations with a Corgi. We are back from New Jersey, where we had Christmas with my family, and we might try to do a quick one of these tomorrow. I'm going to some friend's house for breakfast. And then the rest of the week I'm at my teacher job. So it's a rough time for Conversations with a Corgi. We're so busy. So I hope you enjoyed this book, The Watching. I really love it. I can't recommend it enough. I apparently have 3 copies of it because I liked it so much I kept buying it. So I will have to share it with some of my corgi-loving friends. Thanks for joining us today. Everybody have a great day. Hi, Sue Binger. Hi, Pat. Give kisses to all those animals. It's not too cold here. We're having a nice, light, pretty snow. No actual snow. Merry Christmas to you guys, too. Christmas Corgi. Are you a Christmas Corgi? He has a lot of presents to open tomorrow. At least 3 or 4 that he can eat. Thanks for joining us. Everybody have a wonderful holiday, and we will see you soon. At least we'll try to see you tomorrow and definitely on Saturday. So thanks for joining us. Dory sends smooches. Tristan does too. Give him a kiss, Tris. He's trying to blow a kiss. All right, we'll see you guys.